Welcome to the Been There, Done That podcast with Angela Dunn-Cartledge. I have the Been There, Done That podcast, and I'm your host, Angela Dunn-Cartledge. I am here with my new friend, Dr. Andrea Corn, and we are going to have a great conversation today about healing. Andrea, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, it is indeed my pleasure to join you today. So thank you for inviting me, Angela, on your show.
Perfect. Tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about what your passion is in this world.
Well, I have been a licensed psychologist for nearly 30 years. And I think being in the work as a psychologist, you want to help others. You're compassionate, you're caring. You realize that there's a lot of brokenness in the world. There's a lot of heartbreak, and there's a lot of people that struggle with all sorts of problems. And whether they're family problems, personal, work, identity, whatever it may be, to be able to get a hold of one's thoughts, one's feelings, to be able to make sense of the meaning of what's going on internally and externally is so important. A lot of my work did start out in divorce work and helping parents and children because I had gone through a divorce and I had gotten help. And I realized I wanted to be able to do something similar, to give something back and to help others. And to be able to step in an empathic way to understand what that person is going through, whether it's a mother, a father, a child. Divorce is never easy. It's very complicated. It's a loss too, because you have a loss of the nuclear family. You have a loss of what were many hopes and dreams and wishes of thinking you're going to have this person that you're going to spend the rest of your life with, and you're going to build this family together, and it's going to be beautiful. And then when the cracks start and the foundation crumbles and you realize it's not going to be a happy home life, and you have to make a different decision to protect yourself or your children, it can be terrifying because your whole world is torn upside down.
Yeah, it definitely takes away the fear of the unknown at that moment. You have nothing, you have no choice but to find a
Right.
new normal, right? And I particularly being a child of divorce, I love that your focus is on each individual person and finding that that right path for them and what that looks like, reconstructing what that looks like. How being a child of divorce, how do you structure that in terms of a safety net for children in those situations?
Well, with children in the therapy room, you help them understand that within these walls, it's a safe place, that they can talk about anything, they could say anything, but they can't hurt themselves, they can't hurt me, they can't break the toys, they can't like punch a hole in the wall per se, but they can help them learn how to use words. For some children, they may use art. I use puppets, I use clay, I use all sorts of arts and crafts. I have therapeutic board games to help them be able to talk about what maybe they can't talk about. And in the beginning, maybe it's too threatening to talk about their anger at, let's say, their mother or their father or the situation, but they could talk about being angry if I had a dog puppet or if I had a cat puppet, and they could make up a story and talk about that. Or like I said, with a board game, I ask non-directive questions, and the questions could help them think about what it is that's bothering them, but they don't have to get too close to the material because it takes time to build trust. It takes time for them to feel safe to open up, because they could hear me say that, but they're not going to automatically believe from the very beginning that they can say what they want and that there's no repercussions. Yes, children, there are limits to what they can say. And if there was a child that, if there was abuse or neglect, or there was something that I needed to know about, I would have to report and tell their parents. But I make all that very clear in the beginning, the limits of confidentiality, as well as what therapy can do and what therapy is supposed to do. And talking about this, I think it also leads us into grief, because the the loss of a family, the breakup of a family is something that has to be mourned and it has to be grieved. And it's very painful when you have friends who have intact families, or, they talk about what they're doing and you don't have that. And when you're going back and forth between two homes, or maybe there's just one home because the parent moved away or the parent's unavailable, it creates another kind of a loss for that child that they don't understand fully. Many times they take it upon themselves to think, what did I do wrong? How come my parent isn't here with me? Why isn't my parent at school or coming to meet the teacher or seeing how I do on the soccer field? And because children, young children especially, the world revolves around them. So if someone is not there for them, to them they think, well, what did I do wrong? Because children are going to be egocentric. They have, because that's how it starts out. They have to believe that the world will be a safe place because their mom or their dad or their caregiver or their grandmother or whoever it is going to take care of them. So if that person can't be there, then they wonder, what did I do to deserve that? Why isn't that person there for me? And it takes a long time. It takes them till like 10, 12, 14 to understand that this was beyond their control. They had nothing to do with the choices, the actions, the decisions of another.
That's to me, the most beautiful part of your process is that you're saying, I want to deal with what we can control. What can we focus on that we
Right,
can actually do something about with your limited development, in your brain, the
right,
limited development that you've already experienced. But as you get older, being able to continue to build that construct around what really happened, not what you think happened because your brain told you one thing or a
right,
different thing or whatever. I really love not thinking about it as being something you could have controlled, that it was your fault, that it
right.
was that you were somehow some kind of blame.
What I was going to add to that is oftentimes parents, even the most well meaning parent or grandparent or older sibling or aunt and uncle, could say, well, don't get upset about that. Get over it. Let it go. But children need to feel their feelings. They need to learn how to understand their feelings. They're like signposts. It's like if they don't understand why they're sad, they're going to have that feeling and they're not going to understand why they have that feeling, or if they're really angry. Not to say you shouldn't feel that way. Well, let's talk about it. Let's understand it. How can we transform it? Whether it's anger, whether it's sadness, whether it's fear, confusion, not knowing, being able to understand that there is a way to get a hold of the feelings and learn how to be more in control of them rather than let the feelings control the child or the adult. Because oftentimes the child's afraid to express the feeling. They don't want to hurt the parent. They don't want to upset the parent. Or they see the parent very sad and they emulate that, but then they're both stuck in that feeling of how do we get out of this pain? And that happens in grief work all the time too.
Yes, yes. To me, this is just one way that we can grieve is a loss of a relationship or a loss of a stable nuclear family, to your point, the stability that comes with that. And I find in this work that blame is one of the first things we want to do. We want to find some kind uh, of a reason behind what happened. And in the case of divorce or even in loss of anything really, in the death of someone, we want to blame something. How do we get better at removing that part from the process, or is it just a natural part of the process that we just have to get through? Which way do you lean?
I think as a therapist, the way I try to lean to help others is to try to find meaning and to make sense of one's pain. Not to blame and not to shame and not to guilt oneself or, hold on to things that, as you say, you have no control over, but how to use that emotion, that pain, that grief, that struggle, that confusion, in a way that somehow you can gain clarity, because we all will have grief. We all will have loss. We all will lose someone we loved with all our heart and soul in our lives. And there can be vicarious losses. All different kinds of losses. A friend can lose a spouse and you can feel their pain. You could have a job loss. There could be so many different kinds of losses. And it's very easy to want to pin it on something, to feel like, well, it wasn't me, but rather how to use oneself. It's like using one's body as an instrument. Why am I feeling this? What is it telling me? How do I help myself? What can
Oh,
I learn from this pain?
I really love that idea of using your body as an instrument, finding the places that are out of tune or finding where it's stuck and the sound doesn't come out
Yeah,
as well. I love that. That's so beautiful. And I really like finding the meaning because in so many situations, um, those of us that aren't trained and don't have the knowledge that you do say things to each other that isn't very helpful, like to your point about just get over it, or uh, they're in a better place now. That's
right.
not something that a person that has just lost their greatest love, to your example, wants to hear.
No,
They
they
want to
you're
know that
you're
they were meant to
absolutely
be
right.
here. They were meant to be with me. That's where they
Right.
were meant to be. I was happy. They were happy. Everything was fine when we were together. Or even in the case of a relationship loss, that you you know, good riddance. There's more fish in the sea. Not
Right.
helpful when you're the one that is the receiver of that decision. You didn't want this. This wasn't the thing that you wanted. So to know that there are plenty of other people out there that you could go jump into a relationship with is not exactly the most helpful thing in the world to do. But we don't give each other the space to sit in that moment. So
That
how can we better sit in those hard moments and to your I love that you said give meaning to it. How do we do that on our own, or do you really suggest that we get professional help to do that?
I think it's both. It's never an either or. Because at times we need people, we need to turn to others. But sometimes they don't have to say anything. They could just be present. They could just show up. I think the hardest thing with grief work or any kind of loss is we don't want someone to suffer. We don't want someone to feel badly. We don't, it hurts to see their tears, or it hurts to see them enraged. So it's like we want them to get over it, but you can't just get over it. You have to live through it. You have to experience it. And that takes time. And there is no time limit when you tell someone, like, you should be over this by now. How come you're still feeling, who is to say how long it's going to take? Because the length of the relationship, the the complexity of the relationship. How was was it a great relationship? Was this the best relationship they ever had because they had difficult ones before? Or did they have a string of really hard relationships and they were working their way towards something more meaningful and beautiful? Everyone's situation and relationship to whoever they lost is going to be different depending on the age and the stage and so many variables of their personality. And so, and I think what's so hard is we don't want to sit with discomfort. Discomfort's like sitting on a porcupine or a cactus. We don't want to be there because we know it's uncomfortable, it's miserable, it's icky. And so everybody wants to move through it, but this is a time where you need the process and you have to go slow. Going through it quickly, you end up usually repeating it at some other point in time with someone else in a different way, because it says maybe relationships aren't that significant. Like, oh, I could discard, I can get rid of that person. But we never really get rid of someone. They're in our hearts, they're in our minds. And the best thing that we can do over time is to find a way to make our lives have meaning and purpose for that person, because they mattered, and we want to carry them with us in a way, in our hearts and in our minds and in our actions, to give them, to show that our life has meaning too, because we're still living. Fragility, vulnerability, disappointment, all of this goes hand in hand when we lose someone. Grief and loss and life, they're inextricably linked. We can't have life without loss or death. And so how do we hold on to what we loved about that person? Because just like, we see stars that come out at night and they sparkle. Well, during the day we don't see the stars, but those, like the stars, those people are in our hearts. We remember them. We don't forget them. And we have to hold them near and dear and through our actions because they're a part of us. So we find meaning by honoring their lives through our work, through our actions and how we live. I think that's the best way that we can honor someone. We don't have to create a foundation. We just have to hold on to what we loved about them. It could have been their sense of humor. It could have been their sweetness. It could have been just something that they were just such a kind person or they made you laugh, whatever it might have been. But you want to remember something about that individual and carry it forward in your life because they matter. They meant something deeply to you.
Otherwise, you wouldn't be grieving them, right? There
That's
wouldn't be
right.
that need
That's
to
right.
miss them if they didn't mean something. And I think in our original portion of this conversation about divorce, where I see that meaning coming is it obviously is individual and it depends on where you fall in the relationship and whose decision it was and those kinds of things. But you can still find the positivity in it. You can still see how did I fall in love in the first place? Why did, we ended up having 12 kids. Look at
Right.
the beauty in that. Whatever that is for
You
you
know
in
what?
that
Yes,
specific.
that's
Yeah.
absolutely true. And who one was at the beginning of their marriage, whether it's 5, 10, 15, 20, however many years, each individual has changed. And they realize things about themselves that they probably did not realize earlier on. Maybe they didn't stand up to their partner. Maybe they wanted to please them, that they made too many sacrifices, or maybe they were, too controlling or domineering, and they realized, this is not a healthy way to create a healthy relationship. So through even the struggles or even the divorce, there is positive growth. There can be a constructive outcome, like I'm going to be a better person now for my children, for myself, if I meet someone else, because we learn our hardest and our most difficult lessons through problems and challenges
Yeah,
and
through pain.
adversity.
Yeah, absolutely. The growth that comes out of that is usually leaps and bounds different
Right.
than just the everyday growth that we
Yes.
experience, which we all do it as we go. But I love the comparison that you're giving us between losing a person and losing a relationship, because in my definition of grief is any adjustment, any change to what was there. What was there yesterday is not there today. Therefore, I have to adjust to it and I have to grieve that loss, whether it be small or big. And I love the way that you're describing that because I think that's so much more digestible to the audience to be able to say, oh, wait a second. I didn't think of that as being a grief. I didn't think of that piece as being something I still needed to process. Um, for me, one of the biggest memories I have is when my parents got divorced. So I have a lot of stories and a lot of meaning that has been built around that moment. But for me as a child, I wish I had had Dr. Andrea Corn in my life to be able to talk me through what that really was and not what I perceived it as being, and then created this story around it that affected me later on in life. So I think there's some beauty in understanding that while they look different to the eye, your body retains them the same way. Am I hearing that right? Am I thinking about that the right way?
No, you absolutely are, because in a our bodies, there's some wonderful books by some very famous psychologists, and Bessel Kirk is one of them. He talks about how the body keeps the score, especially in trauma. And talking about divorce, how old were you when your parents divorced?
I was 6. Mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
So at that age, you don't really understand at all what happened. All you know is something dramatic changed, and it was very scary, and it was terrifying, and it was overwhelming. So all those feelings of not knowing, not understanding, even if you had some vague idea of what might have been going on, at the same time you couldn't, because it's a 6-year-old's perception. And so you spend the rest of your life in some ways looking at it and making meaning and finding sense, and as an adult understanding it far differently than you ever could as a child. Because as a child, you could only understand it through a child's eyes.
And to your point, to your original point when we were talking about this at the very beginning of the episode, that we don't give each other a lot of extra space for that. So at the time, my dad was grieving, my mom was grieving. There wasn't really a way for me to ask questions, for me to dig into that and say, "Hey, what's going on here?" I'm 6 years old. I wouldn't understand anyway. But even if there was more communication around it, I feel that there still could have been some holes in the block of cheese, that there may have been some need for some professional assistance to make sure that those
I
that
think back
that
then people didn't realize how necessary it was
so
and
real.
how much it could have helped. And I
Absolutely.
think back in those days, before divorce became more commonplace, there was more shame, there was more stigma. People didn't want to talk about it. There was embarrassment, there was guilt, there was a lot of sadness, anger, so many emotions that all needed to be processed. And instead of being understood again without blaming, because really, I think putting two people together that grew up in totally different environments, totally different families, and thinking that we're going to find a way to live happily ever after and make this work is a tall order, because most of us really don't know. We don't know ourselves well enough in our 20s to be able to know someone else well enough to be able to talk about our fears, our hopes, our dreams, what upsets us. How do we work through this? Can you hear me? Can you understand me? How do I understand you? How can I help you? It can be so fraught, like walking a tightrope, that sadly we can understand why marriages do break up, but we also want to celebrate how to help marriages stay together even when there are problems, because life is full of problems. Life is full of celebrations, and it's also full of grieving. It's full of both moments. And so it is a metaphor, like, how do I learn how to help myself be with myself and present and understand my thoughts and feelings, and not blame or project on someone else that they hurt me, it's their fault, they're wrong. Well, I would have to be a co-constructor to have created something, to have contributed. Well, maybe I was aware of it, maybe I wasn't. And at times we all have our blind spots that we don't see, we don't realize. And I have found as time goes on, and the more I have also done grief work, I've come to appreciate all the individuals I've lost in my life in very rich ways, from my mother, my father, my late husband, just so many people that I have a much healthier and deeper respect for. I look at them with softer and kinder eyes. I think developing forgiveness and compassion, forgiveness for what we didn't even understand at the time.
Absolutely. It's so real because we hold on to it thinking it's protecting us, thinking it's creating armor for us, and instead it's doing the opposite, right? It's creating.
Right. I think so often people want to be right, or they want to prove, no, it was her fault. No, it was his fault. He did it. No, she did it. And instead of saying, well, how did I contribute to this? What did I not understand? Where did I fail myself and the marriage or my partner? And I've come to see things now about myself that I had not realized in my 20s. There was no way I could, because I didn't have that insight or that maturity or that awareness. to see something with
I,
clarity.
I love that, and I see that so much in, youth is wasted on the young. The thing that we all say, if we could go back in time and tell our younger self, what would we tell them? And I would say, first, just be still. Just hang on a second, because it's not gonna. You think that it's the end of the world. It's not, but it is so real that we don't, especially in our American culture, we have this idea that you do this, then you do this, then you do this, then you do this. And one of those things is grow up, get married, have the kids, get the good job and the picket fence, and then you go forward. And I think we put so much pressure on ourselves to be able to make that decision at a time when we have no idea. We don't even know what we want to be when we grow up, and we think we are grown up. We don't
Right,
know any of it. And yet here we are making decisions forever, happily ever after, as you said, that
right.
it's just it's not possible to do that. And then on top of it, then we make things more complicated by uh, trying to buy a house and having kids and getting the dog and doing all the fun things that we do in our lives. And then we wonder why we're unhappy, because we're completely off the rails. We've left our dreams behind, and we have no idea where to find them again.
Well,
Yeah.
I think that's part of it is it takes time to really get to know oneself. We think we're oneself by, like you say, our possessions, or we identify with our career. Yes, we have our identity. I am a psychologist, or I'm a banker, or I'm a lawyer, or I'm a stay-at-home mother, whatever the career or no career. But we think we know who we are, but many times we really don't. And then I found words can also help us, but they can also hurt us by what we say to ourselves, but what we tell others. And we have to learn how to really think about how to speak with kindness and clarity so we can be heard, because we think we're telling someone a story, but they could have a whole different impression of what was going on. Let's say, oh, I'm so upset at my husband, and go into this whole big diatribe about all the things he did wrong. And the person could walk away thinking, boy, he's a jerk. But really, in a way, what you weren't telling was the whole story about maybe what, let's say, if I was the white, what I didn't do, or how I could have helped, or I might have shaped it differently. And instead, we can give a lot of misperceptions or hurt others through
I
our words.
It's so real, and that's such a great segue to the next question, because what I really wanna know is, how do you coach your clients to speak better, to be more open, to be, more aware? How do we do that? And use words to do that with each other?
Well, it's a process. It doesn't happen overnight because you can't tell them. You have to sort of show them or ask them to think about, how does this sound to you? Would it sound better if I said, how are you feeling this moment or at this moment right now, versus, you look like really sad right now. Are you sad? You know, so by asking rather than telling, right? Or, you have such an angry look on your face, or you look so annoyed. By telling them, you're not helping them. You have to ask, like, what's going on? What are you thinking about? What's bothering you? What could I do to help you? And how could you help yourself? And I think the real key, and this is the hardest thing, is how do we develop forgiveness for ourselves? How do we develop compassion? Because it's like when someone loses someone and you feel that sense of brokenness, that brokenheartedness, it's, you feel like you could just crumble. You feel like your world's falling apart. It's a very tough place to be. And what I've been thinking about, and I have the word written down in the Japanese culture, the term for fixing broken things is called kintsugi. And what they do with ceramics is they take a mixture of metals like gold and silver and they paint it like on the ceramic. So you see the brokenness, you see the lines, or you see where something cracked. And that's the metaphor how we help ourselves build resilience, how we help ourselves love ourselves with our imperfections, whether it's a loss or a divorce or a death, because we will feel broken. And yet we have to help ourselves find resilience. We have to find a way to love ourselves even with our imperfections and find a way to heal oneself. And the only way to really do it is to be loving and kind to oneself. You're not going to get there by, get over it, tough it out, what's wrong with you?
Right. Or
It's
doing that to someone else and then
or doing that to someone else. It's going to come from what a
Hey there, it's Angela from Been There, Done That. If you're navigating the wild, unpredictable world of grief, I want to invite you to something special. It's called Messy Mornings, and it's our free weekly newsletter filled with real talk, gentle reminders, and support that actually meets you where you are. Each week, I'll send you stories, reflections, healing prompts straight to your inbox. No fluff, no pressure, just the space to release, feel, and heal. You don't have to do this alone. Head over to donethatpodcast.com and sign up for Messy Mornings. It's totally free and it's made with you in mind. I've been there, and let's walk through this together.
how would a kind word feel right now? And they'll say, oh, that would be helpful. So this is what you have to practice at home with yourself. So when you ask, it's a give and take. Therapy is a give and take. Every situation, every patient I work with is different, but once you get to know them and have a sense of who they are, you talk to them in their language. You help them use their language to help them heal themselves. And I think we all have to, instead of striving to be the best or the most productive or perfect, how to be okay with our imperfections, with our limitations, because we all have them.
And acknowledging that we have them. We say that so much, especially in the States. We say, don't try to be perfect. You'll never get there. But I still feel like we do. We, even though we say it to each other, there's still this undercurrent of, yeah, I know we say that, but we really do mean that if we just work harder, we'll get to a better place and, to a more perfect place. And I really feel like that's such a hard thing to do. It's human nature to compare. It's
It
human.
it is. And there's certain careers where you are striving for excellence. You have to be the best or you want to be the best you are. And depending on whether you're an Olympic athlete or you're a doctor, yes, you want to be the best and you want to try to strive for perfection, but for those of us, most of us, it's not ever about being perfect. It's giving one's best effort. It's doing one's best job that they can at that moment in time. Some days you wake up, you feel energetic, raring to go. You could conquer the world. Other days you feel, oh, I didn't sleep well. I'm lethargic, or I got a headache, or my body hurts. And, you have to be willing to accept the fact that there's going to be this ebb and flow. It's not always going to be the same. And to accept what is. So again, it's about acceptance. It's about finding the meaning in, well, why can't I do this? But what can I do to help myself? How can I support myself and show up, do my best job, and give myself credit, even if I don't feel my best today?
And I feel like giving that acceptance to the people in our lives
Yes,
makes a huge difference in our ability to
right. Because
navigate,
imagine if we tell our children or we tell our spouse or our best friend, and we really want to be able to lift others up.
especially in relationship, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. How can we work with you? Well, first, let me back up. Let me say this. Give us a parting shot. One thing that we can take from this episode that we can apply right away and start to do differently in our relationships and in our everyday lives.
All right, I'm going to say every day, find one thing that you could say to yourself, all right, I am proud for what I attempted or I tried to do or I gave it my all. It's okay if it didn't work. I baked a cake, it fell. I had the temperature too high or I didn't keep it in too long or whatever it was. But, appreciate the effort. Find something to say to yourself that's kind. I guess that's really what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
And I think building on kindness, because most of us are very self critical. I'm very self critical to myself, not to other people. But but I'm very hard on myself, and I'm really working on softening that, enlightening it, and trying to approach it with more consideration than condescending criticism.
Yeah.
So I think if my one thing would be find one thing that you could acknowledge and be lift yourself up with, some kind word. Even if it was just I was present today.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Tell us how we can find you, how we can work with you in the world, and how we can
Oh, that is so sweet. Well, I am licensed in Florida. I do telehealth, and I have a website. This is www period doc Andrea, AndreaCorn, Dr. Andrea Corn, and I'm in Psychology Today. I'm a member of the American Psychological Association. I'm a member of a number of organizations, the Florida Psychological Association, the American Psychoanalytic Association. And if I can help others, that is always my gift to be able to do. But there's so many wonderful and talented therapists all around the country. I'm not the only one, but I'm grateful for you having me on your show today. If anything, I hope it allows people to realize that therapy can be beneficial in their lives and not to see it as something, oh, I have a problem and that person's going to fix it. No, we try to solve it together. And it's not about fixing it, it's about helping someone understand themselves, to gain self awareness, to gain greater confidence by knowing oneself. It's not about, resolve, because we're never going to resolve or fix all our problems.
there's gonna be
Life
new.
is full of problems, right?
Right.
Every day there
There
could be a
will be
new
new
one.
ones. Yeah.
Well,
This will
I think it's also taking a different attitude rather than I got to fix the problem. What can I do to make it better? How do I help myself? How do I move forward? Because we all struggle with certain problems, situations, people in our lives. And it's not about dismissing them or not talking to them or ignoring them or realizing that they're, impossible. But maybe there's a way I could change my approach or my attitude to be able to say, maybe there's some way I can work with this person or help them or help myself understand they need to be this way for a reason, that they're protecting themselves or they don't know any better and they don't realize what they're doing, but they're not trying to punish me or hurt me. So I think it's about having to be able to open one's eyes to have a different perspective.
love that. I love that. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your time,
Oh, it was my
for
pleasure.
your knowledge. I learned so much, and I know
Oh,
the
thank
audience will
you.
too. Thank you for everything.
Oh, well, it was my joy to be here today. And if I helped your audience, then that's a great gift for me that I will take away. So thank you. And to see your smile makes me smile. And I'm happy I was on your show today. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much.